Hello and welcome to this edition of Finance and Technology Insights. I'm Brian Williams.
And I'm Eric Bjorndorf. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. It's been a couple of weeks, but we're
Yes, I
good to be
know.
back at it.
Shame. It's my fault again. I don't even remember what the interruptions were, to be honest with you. But
that's all right. Well, when we had a field day, so that's
right. We had a field. Right?
So
the girls are wrapping up their school year, so there was field day, one of them, and then I don't know what the other one was. But as always, I appreciate your grace on that. And,
yeah, no problem. Hey, it's never like I have to go anywhere, so you could cancel with a minute before we're supposed to start, and I'll find something to do. So
sorry about that.
Issue there. We've got that's all right though. There's been absolutely nothing that's happened in finance or technology in the last.
Oh no. That's why I really was blowing it off, because I like to pile it up a little bit so that we can have something to talk about. So, what is going on in the news that you find newsworthy?
Well, I'm trying to prioritize a little bit and mentally go through things. I think the big thing that came through, I'm sure we'll get to the Apple stuff in a second, but NVIDIA, I mean, they had like blowout numbers. They became they touched over being the fourth $1 trillion company. So they're joining the likes of Microsoft, Apple, and
I am a shameful retail investor. Like, as soon as the news cycle picks it up, I'm like, add this company to my watch list, And is that pathetic or what?
Well, hey, that's what happens, but it's it's trading at like really high multiples, so they'll meaning it's expensive, right? You're paying a lot for earnings. That's at your core when you're buying a stock that you're doing. You're paying for that company's earnings, so you're paying a lot for earnings. You're paying a lot for revenue, a lot for sales. But the idea in technology, those are always trading at very high multiples because they'll grow into it, right? They put on big boy pants. You're buying them in big boy pants, and the idea is they'll grow into that. But that's not necessarily not everyone is saying that, because you've got other companies that are building their own chips as well. So even though NVIDIA is making these chips, and they've brought this next generation chip that everybody's talking about, also you have the software and the other hardware companies are building their own chips. And I guess that's maybe the tie into Apple yesterday too, is because of the logjam in chips that was created partially by COVID and supply chain issues. You've had companies start to build their own chips, but yeah, most people people in the industry know NVIDIA. But I asked my wife if she had heard, and she's like, no, I never heard of them. I'm like, well, would you put them in the ranks of these three companies? She's like, no, those I've heard of. NVIDIA I haven't. But so that was kind of interesting. I thought that was probably the biggest news since we had our last session.
Yeah, the leather jacket that the CEO wears during all of his keynotes and investor calls or whatever, it gives me that Theranos vibe. What's her name that just went to prison? Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah.
So it's like the cult of personality. I think he's trying to drum up a little bit.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, just trying to tie it. They all have their sort of fashion thing. Of course, Steve Jobs with the turtlenecks, and Zuckerberg was the hoodie, and they're all kind of doing their own thing. I mean, at that level of CEO, you are a performer, you're an entertainer, you're a communicator. Right. Yeah, right. You're not that far, you're not that much in the weeds of the day-to-day stuff. You're a salesperson, right?
Right. Okay, so my response to NVIDIA, being the $4 trillion company, they got their start as a video game or a video, what they would call a video adapter, which is the video card you would have in a computer. And they kept putting more and more RAM on it and evolving that technology to make video processing on computers better. Then they really were tailoring for the video game industry, but then they've kind of pivoted, or they're expanding into, I think they went into mobile. They didn't do good in mobile, but now they're seeing AI is their new frontier. I know that their chips were in the Tesla cars for a period of time, I think early, and they were going to be the platform, the computing platform for the self-driving technology.
Mm-hmm.
They did showcase a AI development ecosystem, which I don't want to get too technical on, but various tools and plugins that developers can use to leverage AI and things. And what I saw was nothing short of fascinating and amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But and then they have they've got competition from ATI, which is noticeably quiet right now during this news cycle. Unless I missed something. I don't know if you're watching to that degree.
I haven't heard much from them. No.
And then you have, like you mentioned, other companies, and so for example, Tesla decided to manufacture their own chip technology. So now NVIDIA's got the competition from their previous customers. So their customers are actually
Right.
innovating away from NVIDIA. So is the market big enough? Is this whole AI fad big enough to sustain? I don't know. I didn't look at their revenues. Did you watch their quarterlies or anything? Or
I did, yeah. I read through it. I mean, their numbers were very good. They had blowout numbers. Whether that justifies the stock price or
multiple,
not, I mean,
right?
who knows? It's the stock will trade what the market decides it's going to trade for.
Right.
But
Right.
it's a very expensive. Basically, they need to execute perfectly on all of their strategies to make that,
I mean, I guess the idea is
worthy
like
purchase.
these tech companies create new markets and new
Mhm.
that have never existed before. So it's like new pockets of revenue that just weren't there before, right? So the
Right.
AI economy, I guess maybe is what that stock price is riding
Mhm.
on. Which the AI economy, by the way, is fledgling, right? It's new, so
Right.
we don't know. It's a multi-trillion-dollar pool of dollars that these companies might be vying for as the AI world kind of takes over.
Yeah, and what does that pull from? It's not just a whole created, businesses that build their own large language models or tap into something else. They don't suddenly have this budget money from somewhere. They don't just have, money to spend on this. So where else are they cutting from? Are they cutting from their cloud services or hardware or their people? Are they cutting from their staff to build this stuff? So
Right.
money's got to come from somewhere. So if they cut staff and then that staff can't go buy their video game systems or whatever, that could hurt NVIDIA on the other side.
Well,
But
I mean, I mean, it could come from increased capital, increased productivity.
Mhm.
If AI delivers, which I've seen it myself in my own company, AI is delivering. It is producing more work with less people or the same
Mhm.
people. So the trickle down economics or something, is in effect. So,
Yeah.
anyways, I don't want to spend too much time on that, but yeah, either way, I mean, however you view NVIDIA or whatever your history is with NVIDIA, it's interesting. They've come up kind of in my entire career. So
Mhm.
as I remember being a kid, seeing the new NVIDIA chip coming out, and then following NVIDIA, and then ATI. ATI was I think. Oh God, I'm so rusty on my history now. ATI was a graphics maker, but they merged with what was the chip company that AMD. I think
AMD.
AMD bought ATI, and I don't even know if they even go by ATI. Am I that old? I don't know. So I don't know. Interesting to see a
Yeah, and
pop
then
up like that.
it's symbolic that the name we haven't mentioned, and we're a few minutes in, is Intel. We haven't even mentioned them, right? Isn't that
Who's
crazy?
Intel? Intel who?
Intel, right? Yeah, Intel.
Yeah, poor
Crazy.
Intel. They missed
I know.
mobile. They've got AMD making them look bad with their own technology, with the x86 architecture. The
Mhm.
Itanium never went anywhere in the 2000s. I know that was supposed to be their big thing. 64-bit computing just took forever to get there. And then it was kind of interesting. I remember years. I don't know if we want to go down history lane, but
Sure.
I remember when Apple and Steve Jobs announced that they were going to go to the Intel architecture on their processors for Macs. And immediately I knew that you could then dual boot or run dual operating systems. You could run Windows on a Mac.
Mhm.
And I said, well, that's going to hugely help their market, because Apple has struggled with having a smaller, always like a 1 to, I think maybe they're even up to 30% of the personal computer market now. And as soon as they went to Intel, I said, oh, great. As soon as you can run Windows on a Mac, more people can get Macs,
Yeah.
But they actually then turned away from that about, I think, 4 years ago, with this new M processor that Apple has designed. So now they're going away from Intel again. So it does seem like Intel's kind of out in the cold right now.
It does. Yeah. And then another name that I hadn't checked in on in a while was VMware. They're still alive and doing all right, but I remember that was the big, right, spinning up virtual machines, and you could do your, run your Windows on your Mac machine and on a virtual machine and all that kind of stuff. That was like a big hot thing for a little while.
Yep. And VMware used to be an on-prem technology. We would run VMware on a server in offices or in a data center, and we would be able to run multiple instances of servers and workstations and things. And then Microsoft came out with Azure, and Hyper-V, I think, that allowed, so you could do it with Windows, and it was kind of baked into Windows. So yeah, I'm kind of surprised. I had a meeting with a prospective client, large prospective client yesterday, and I don't know what I want to say here, but they basically, I could tell right out of the gate, this guy was just a Microsoft hater. Like the CIO of the company was just a Microsoft hater. And I always laugh at those guys who hate particular companies and their technologies, when you can tell, obviously, that it's rooted in the kind of cult of personality of the company, I don't like that company's personality, therefore I'm going to hate their, but in technology, it's so costly to maintain that kind of idea about companies, because you're constantly not picking necessarily the best product for your need. You're picking like the best product from the vendor that you emotionally like.
Yeah. And maybe you can't tell me this, but was some of that rooted in self-preservation or self-importance?
No, there's two types of IT guys, and it's like, well, maybe there's three. There's the Apple guy who's just he's stuffing Apple products into his enterprise as much as he possibly can, and that guy and that organization is paying through the nose for not having all their needs met. And it's very Apple-y, and we've seen that a lot. Then you've got the Windows or the Microsoft guy who's just full Microsoft, full boat, hates Apple, big eye roll when Apple is trying to get introduced to his environment. Then you've got the Linux guy who hates them both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like organizations, CEOs and business owners, when they have a technology leader that like, they should run far and fast away from a technologist who's like, Apple, I hate that company, or Linux, and I guess it's self-serving for me to say this, because the fourth kind of IT person is someone like me who's like vendor agnostic. Like I don't care. I mean, the cultural things I obviously have opinions about, but like I can separate that from like, I'm just trying to run successful businesses here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we're going to use the best technologies, and because we're dragging our feet getting to the Apple stuff yesterday, but because technology companies, they're not in lockstep all the time with their release of features and functionality. They have different release windows, and then they actually have different appetites for how they view technologies and solutions, security and management. So if you're just kind of all in on one platform or one vendor or one company, like you're just always going to miss maybe optimizing the software and tools and solutions that you're kind of leveraging,
Yeah. Yeah, and to stall on the Apple discussion a little bit more, but it's funny how things like that come up are universal, not just between us, between our businesses, but between multiple businesses too. And I was talking to somebody in my industry, not the same profession, but adjacent, I guess you'd call it. And we were discussing. There's been a number of these like preferred provider announcements or this strategic partnership and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, it wasn't that long ago that the big thing was I'm independent, I'm agnostic, I can go anywhere, do anything. Now you're seeing, this brokerage firm partner with this, let's say 401k record keeping company, and now they're formed a strategic alliance and they're preferred. And I'm thinking, well, a few years ago, this business, part of what they did was we're going to search the market and we're going to find the best solution for you. Now, in the same breath, they're saying, well, we've formed this partnership and now they're a preferred provider. And you're like, well, who is that good for? I mean, it's good for the two partners that came together. They get to put out a press release and, do a kumbaya and do a little video and all that kind of stuff. But if I'm the customer, I'm thinking, who gives a crap? What does this mean to me? If anything, it's worse. Like, why would you announce that you've basically eliminated 90% of the market and you're not even going to look at them? Just to focus on some, because you have to high five somebody in the men's room. Like, it's crazy.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
You are preaching to the choir. There's a huge behemoth company called Kaseya. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, heard of them or not. They are a huge vendor in the IT software space. Yeah. And they cater to companies like mine, managed service providers. And what they're doing right now is they are aggressively acquiring as many companies in every sector of the solution space: antivirus, RMM, which is remote monitoring management software, security awareness training platforms, we call it the stack, right? So when the whole IT picture for an organization has a stack of hardware and software solutions that run the whole organization, right? And this company is just gobbling up all these companies, and we have they've bought in the last 2 years, I think, 3 or 4 major software vendors that we use to run our business. And now we're like they're all getting wedged under this umbrella. And now we're getting assigned an account manager, and she wants to have like a weekly check-in call with me, or, and then like they want me to adopt one of their solutions to put in front of my clients. And I'm like, I reviewed this space last January, and you just acquired this company, like maybe just prior or whatever, but like, it's not the best solution in the space. So I picked I picked another product. And the what's the word? The not disgruntled, but like the guffaw that she had when I was like, sorry, your entire suite is not the best suite. Like, I'm not just going, you know what I mean? You're not the mini mall of IT software and solutions that I'm just going to shop from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the look, like they have this culture about them that like, we have it all and this is all you need. You know what I mean? And I'm like, sorry, sister, like, it's just not going to work that way. And then they do this bullshit move where they try to get you, well, we'll give you massive incentives with a 3-year commitment, and the integration. It's like, it's only good for the behemoth company that's trying to give you and the consumer less options, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said, I could plug in another brand name, another, like, it's the same exact thing. I mean, you said the mini mall. I mean, it was, this is going back probably a generation or so, but the financial services used to call themselves a financial supermarket. That like used to be like, it wasn't even a pejorative term. That was something they were proud of. Like, oh yeah, you can get everything through us. It's like, okay, but maybe 2 of your 10 products are the best solutions, but the other 8, just because they integrate, well, what the hell does that mean? It's a crappy product. I don't want the other 8. I want the 2.
Yeah. And listen, I can't say I don't come to the table with clean hands, like I can't say that I'm not even a member of this methodology. Like we just launched a full new line of business in under our brand, right? So I've been talking about it over the months with you. But we doubled the size of our company in the last 6 months, launching an entire new line of business. So we are now a full service digital marketing agency.
Mhm.
So and now our entire IT client base is being marketed saying like, hey, you need a website, you want us to manage your Google ads, you want us to manage your social, like we can do that now with your relationship. Obviously the angle is like the benefit of vendor consolidation, and that is a benefit. Vendor consolidation is a benefit where it's a benefit, but we also have a culture, and it's just our company, and it's kumbaya, I guess. But when I meet with a prospective client or a client who's like, considering a new product or offering or solution from us, like I can't help but say, like, listen, you can get this from anybody, like you can get a website from 1,000 companies or individuals, I just say, like, what's the decision maker? Is it price? We're always not going to always win on price. Is it the ease and is it the reliability? And what we leverage is business leaders, business owners. They just want to get stuff done quickly. You know what I mean? So that's that's what's important. So, I mean, I'm on a rant, but yeah. So
no, I understand. It's a delicate balance between, you're promoting your services and doing what's right for the client. I mean, you could take that to the nth degree and be like, well,
right.
there's somebody else down the street who's a nickel cheaper, so I'm gonna do what's right for you. I mean, you can't do that, obviously, but
and the
I
other
mean,
yeah, I'm always trying to evaluate what my philosophy is, in life. And one thing that I've struggled with for a long time is market consolidation. Like I'm little government, small government, that's kind of my ethos. It's kind of where I'm at. But like, yes, we can pool together for a fire department, police, schools, things like that. So I've come to reconcile that, like, no, the communities can come together and have some frameworks to, so government is important. And then if you go look at like what's the federal department that deals with like mergers and acquisitions of like monopolies, like is that
probably SEC, if
the
it's
SEC,
public or Federal
so
Trade Commission,
FTC,
if
right?
like
So over the
monopoly.
year, so you have like Microsoft right now is trying to acquire, I think it's Activision, which is like a behemoth game company, and they're famously known for the Call of Duty series, right? So Microsoft's trying to buy Activision, and prior to that, Activision was gobbling up all these other small development companies, right? So Activision became a behemoth, and now the behemoth wants to eat the behemoth. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so philosophically, I'm like, people, and I think America at large does kind of assign a kind of humanity to businesses for the sake of rights. And so, so I look at it like, well, if Microsoft wants to acquire Activision, Activision wants to be acquired by Microsoft, and that's a mutually engaged contract. Let it happen, right? But then you look at the market and you're like, geez, if Microsoft acquires Activision, then arguably one of the most popular video games will probably not make it to the Nintendo, will not make it to the PlayStation. Now the market starts kind of acting weird. You know what I mean? So a lot of words to say. Like I don't know how to reconcile, like, let people be people, like let the markets work, let the free market work. But then like, at what point do you like start like interfering and forcing two things that want to come together apart? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's probably a sign of maturity, right? You can't put everything in kind of, and it really is just a case by case basis. And you can't have these big philosophical positions because they don't work. Everything is so nuanced. You can't have a company that does 99% of the market share. Would it be good to have the same grocery store have 99% of the market share? Yeah, there'd be huge efficiencies and whatever, but I don't think anybody really wants that.
Well,
so,
we're lacking. I mean, we all know where a market lacks competition, the consumer pays more. I mean, that's just how that works.
Right. And in the video game market, that's a tricky one because you do have different consoles, and at this point, even the consoles target different consumers. Some are more mobile friendly, some are more for the kids, some are more for the gamers and that kind of stuff. So every acquisition is different. Every, any type of corporate activity, just have to look at it case by case. But
Right, and that's why we have
that's
That's why we have this framework and these groups, the FTC, the SEC, that looks at the markets, I guess, and tries to apply some model or framework to of fairness and equity, and saying like, how
Mhm.
would this adversely affect the market? It's kind of interesting though when you look at something that I've been looking at for many years is market consolidation. When you start seeing like little, it's like bacteriums or something, or like, like it's like one eats this one, and now they're like twice as big, and then
Mhm.
there's this game called Worms or something, and like you just go around on this, or snake or something, but like you go around and like you're like this little thing, and you keep eating these little pellets, and then you keep
Oh
growing
yeah.
longer and longer. You ever seen that?
I have.
Um,
There's a similar one that's like I get this ad like during things. It's like like kind of a war game or battle. Like you start off with this little army,
yeah, the same
and then
thing.
you like, yeah, it's the same concept. But
So
yeah,
businesses do this, So
and
two
then they
little
get so
guys.
big, and then they get broken up, or
Yeah.
it's that cycle.
I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
maybe that's just it. Maybe it's just that's the cycle. I mean, the telephone companies did it in the mid 20th century. Ma Bell, right? Did
Yeah, but
Ma?
then they were forced to break up, so that's the other end of it. So you've got the merger part that needs to be overseen, but then you have to oversee these companies where there isn't a natural. They're so big that there is no natural competitor.
Right,
It's like that weed that takes over your backyard or something. It's like
right,
it has no natural predator or whatever.
right,
There's
right,
nothing that eats it, and it just dominates and that's been the talk of, like, the obvious one would be like Amazon breaking up AWS
right.
from their online sales
And
stuff.
the
And
funny thing is, after you break them up, they just start consolidating again after a while. It's that
well,
natural
yeah,
cycle happens. Because Ma Bell, all the telephone companies did that. They all like broke up into these regionals and smaller telephone companies, and then they started merging again, and that's where we got Verizon, T-Mobile. I mean, even T-Mobile and Sprint, I think, did they do a merger that was controversial? I don't know if they pulled that
yeah,
off.
yeah.
So it's like
Well,
the
and then
reconsolidation is happening.
yeah, I think if you go back, that's probably an area of debate. But the breaking up of the bells is part of what propelled the internet. Is that they were kind of tampering that down, and there was no incentive for them to increase quality or increase any of that ability to connect. So,
Right.
but I think if you
Now,
look that up, but
now you said my ears perked up when you said weeds and lawn. Do we go there or no?
yeah, I think we can touch on that. Yeah, so I'll set the stage here, and then you can give the details. So when I first moved into my place about 7 or 8 years ago, I looked at having one of the robotic lawnmowers, but it was you had to put the edging, you had to put the
The
edging in,
boundary
so it
wire.
had the sensors, yeah, the wires, you had to dig those, I don't know, 6 inches deep or something, and then and at the time they weren't great on any sort of hills, and they said, well, you could probably do yours, but it's only recommended for about an acre or so. So technology's grown leaps and bounds, and you are now a customer. So
I am
walk
now
us through
proud.
that.
Yeah, so we moved here 7 years ago. The yard was much smaller when we moved in, and every year I've been clearing, and
Mm.
making the yard larger and larger. And we're finally at the point where the canvas is kind of blank and ready. It's just we have a big grass field, and I've been spending a couple hours a week just on the tractor, just mowing it. And it's funny because my wife is like, I come in one day, I think it was like maybe last summer. I came in, and I just was like, so tired of mowing this lawn.
Mm. Mm.
And she's like, "What's wrong? I thought you liked mowing the lawn. You
Yeah.
bought all this new equipment. You've been working to make the lawn larger, and you bought the new tractor." I'm like, "No, I like having a nice lawn. I don't like
Mm.
mowing the lawn." So we've been getting into the robotic vacuums around the house over the past couple of years, and our first vacuum um, was very manual. It was one of the newer ones, So the first Roomba that came out was like, it just had bump sensors. So the Roomba would just, when you started the Roomba, it would just start this circular pattern until it like bumped into something. It would turn like an eighth of a degree, and then it would start the pattern again. And that it would kind of like vacuum through brute force. You know, there was no logic to it.
Right.
Then they put on ultrasonic sensors, which are similar to like what you have in your car to tell you you're too close to the wall or a curb or something. If your car has that, I know the Tesla has it. And famously, they removed it a couple of years ago for cameras. So then they put the sensor, ultrasonic sensors, which kind of gives it bat vision. And then they started adding LiDAR, which is laser radar, to the vacuums, which now can map the room in a three-dimensional space. And they started sending that map to your phone. Now you can start seeing your house as the vacuum sees it, starts mapping like no-goes and stuff. So the technology has been getting better. And I'm watching the robotic mower space, which actually has been around. They said since the 90s. Husqvarna says they've been doing it since the 90s, which I'm not sure.
I kind of remember almost like literally a remote, like remote control cars. I remember that being like a Radio Shack thing. Yeah. I don't know if I'm like dreaming that or making that up, but I kind of remember the idea of, and I remember my dad saying that, like when I had a remote control
there you go.
car,
Maybe
they
they
should have blades on the bottom of that thing.
Yeah. So, so the mowers, at least in the last 10 years, have looked a lot like the early gen Roombas, which were just like dumb. And so literally these robotic lawnmowers were just aimlessly just driving straight until they bumped into something, would do a turn and then continue driving. And then they would just eventually, because the interesting thing is, this is the first time you see, not the first time, but I mean, it's the kind of first time I've really reconciled or recognized that, wow, when you have all the time in the world, efficiency doesn't really matter, like we're like, long story short, I got a robot mower. And, as we're watching this thing, like process the lawn, it's only taking like a small cut. And then the way that it works has a disc with like 3 little razor blades that it just flings out to cut the grass. And you're looking at like, geez, at first you're like, this is going to take forever. How's this thing going to do this? But then you realize, well, it has nothing but time.
Right.
So anyways, I've been watching the space, did not want to do the boundary wire. I knew that the boundary wire was not tenable for me. I definitely knew that it was a barrier to entry for most people that want to, like, who wants to bury this wire? Watching what the vacuum was, say again?
Yeah, literally a barrier to entry, right?
Yeah, barrier to entry, right?
Yeah.
Watching what the vacuums were doing in the house, like, wow, this is no longer a bump and go thing. This is our downstairs vacuum has ultrasonic sensor, so it sees like a bat, has LiDAR, so it lasers the environment, draws a real 3D representation of the room in real time, and it's got cameras with AI and machine learning. So now it literally sends me pictures of shoes in the way, and with an analysis, and says suspected shoes in the way, and it says confidence like 98%. So like, ultrasonic LiDAR vision on the vacuum. And so I saw what was happening with that, and I said, they're going to come out pretty soon with a robot lawnmower that does not need the boundary wire. And last year I think they announced their first one that doesn't need a boundary wire. So I just got the one that doesn't need a boundary wire. It was shamefully expensive for what it is. So yeah, I've been playing with that for the past couple of weeks.
All right. So obviously I have a million questions about that. And I think that all ties in with the show. I think it's a reasonable topic here. So when you set that up, did you kind of have to like you would with a dog, like walk it around the edge of the yard so it knows your boundaries? Tell me about that setup.
Yeah. So again, I'm going to keep comparing the vacuum with the mower. So the vacuum, you can kind of just like tell it to do its first clean, and it will just drive aimlessly around the house, and it will 3D map the house and save it to the software. And then once you have the house mapped, you can then start dropping in no-go places, and you can start prioritizing rooms and partitioning. The mower doesn't do that, which I was I can kind of see maybe why. The mower is not a danger at all to anybody ever. So that's the good news. So I'm a little surprised they didn't just have that kind of like go out and map the space and come back. So what you have to do is you have to create a workspace, I think they call it, or a work zone. And the way that you do that is you have to, when you initiate that, it undocks the mower from the dock and it backs up and it just waits for you. And then in the software, you literally drive it like an RC car. And you drive it in around the boundary of the workspace. And I was like, oh my God, if the software errors out after like halfway around, this is how many times am I gonna have to do this? Thankfully, the software is buggy, but thankfully it was robust enough that I haven't had to remap any of the yards. So I'm working with the first map, and then the whole editing of the map is not really intuitive. Again, with the vacuum, you can kind of do what's called rubber banding. You can kind of like easily manipulate the boundaries and things, and it's very easy. And you don't need to be connected to the vacuum in order to do that. You just have to have the app internet connected. Whenever you're manipulating the mower's map, you have to be connected to it through Bluetooth. So you have to be within 50 feet of it. And then the software to map it is not really intuitive. You can pick a point and then you can tell it like offset up to 100 centimeters in either direction. It's not the best software. So still getting the hang of it, but
that could be upgraded. That's the good news, right? I mean, once you have the software, once you have the hardware, the software can be updated. So that's good.
Yeah, I mean, but it's pretty clear that the hardware, this thing is going to get the LiDAR and the camera treatment, the vision treatment. It's just the sensors are so inexpensive and the benefit to the software and the functionality is so high. So I'm not an early adopter, and this is going to tie us into the Apple, I think. I'm not an early adopter. I'm a mid-early. I'm a mid-rare, I'm not well done. I'm not rare. I'm mid-rare, a little ahead of the group, the masses, but I'm not that early adopter technologist. When you're an early adopter, you're just suffering from all the pains. You pay through the nose, and you end up beta testing and going through all the pains of the new technology.
Right. It's like they should pay you to take their product.
Yeah, kind of. It's like buying a first model year vehicle. You know what I mean? Like you're just gonna suffer all the problems that were not uncovered during development. So I feel a little bit like that with this mower.
Okay. So two quick questions, one legit, one a little bit wacky. Legit one first. Any concerns about like theft, or what sort of anti-theft? Or
I feel bad for anybody who's going to try to steal this thing. It has a sensor. It has a pickup sensor and a stop sensor. So if you interfere with the thing, it has a ridiculously loud siren on it. And it just runs forever. In fact, I tripped the siren off because I had to relocate the thing once, and the software again is not intuitive in saying like I'm authenticated with the device on my mobile. That's how you control it. The software is not intuitive enough to say like, oh, I need to pick the thing up. So let me hit pick up mower and temporarily disable that. Right. I learned the hard way that you have to go into like settings and disable it prior to handling it. So I picked up the thing, and it took me about 5 minutes to like get the software to recognize what state it's in. And it's like, no, you're not being stolen. You know what I mean? And the whole time I'm kneeling over the device, and this thing's just like ripping my eardrums off.
Wow. Okay.
So anybody who steals this thing is going to end up destroying it just to get it to stop making that noise. Probably.
Yeah. Okay.
Next question.
All right. That's good to know. But I probably am thinking about this. Is there a world you see where we both hate the sound of these enormous industrial lawnmowers that everybody has to have, that could you see a world where somebody rolls into a neighborhood on one of these trucks and like 7 or 8 of these things just roll down the back of the ramps and go out and like mow 7 lawns at once and then go back to this truck?
Partially. So Husqvarna already has a fleet management platform where a landscaper can own many of these units and dispatch them to houses. because the unit is so small and it moves so slowly, it's not practical for a landscaper to show up and then deploy his drones, get the work done, and have them rehome to him and then leave.
Right.
What is happening is Husqvarna lets a landscaper buy these pro versions that then the landscaper has a dashboard that can see what they're doing at any given time, because they all have 4G cell service in them. So they if you do steal a thing, by the way, I'm tracking you all the way down, in real time on a map where the thing is. But yes. So the answer to your question is, this is definitely going to be a situation where you may sign up for a landscaper who's going to take care of your lawn, and the effect of that will be he may dispatch a robot. He may home a robot or reside a robot at your house, and he will just manage the robot, know. And then if you were to discontinue services with him, he would just collect his robot and then go.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So more of a almost kind of a rat. So and it'd probably be a combination, right? So maybe this thing runs, Tuesday at night or something, and he's got on his schedule that he's going to come on he or she is going to come on Wednesday and do the weed whacking and the blowing or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And what's really fascinating, which my dad, who lives with us in our home, he didn't see it yet, but I'm like, Dad, one of the benefits of having a robot lawnmower is it runs every single day. It tops off the grass. So there's no 5 o'clock shadow day or days with my lawn. You know what I'm talking about, right? Those days where you're like, I really can't miss it today. I got to get out. Like the day, like if I go another day, it's going to be too long for the mower. It's going to look like, hell. Every single day, my lawn, my front and back lawn now are like perfectly striped and manicured every single day. Like I haven't had a 5, so you're getting a nice experience. So with the robot, like whether you own it or you hire the landscaper who deploys these things, you're going to have so you're going to have a perfectly kept yard every single day. And then, like you said, the landscaper may time a certain service where he or she comes to do the edging, any supplemental planting, repairs, stuff like that. So I could definitely see that happening.
All right. Good stuff. Makes sense. All right. So Apple did a thing yesterday, right? They had a little conference of which they announced a bunch of stuff. You want to do some of the nerdy tech stuff there?
Yeah. I mean, how much do you want to get into it? Do you want to get right to the big thing, or do you want to cover kind of a summary?
So the big thing, of course, is the goggles. They're wearable, which is a new product category, which was a big talk on tech platforms. And
before we do that, let me just pitch one bitch, which I am now an Apple user. I've been on the phone for years now. I've loved the iCloud ecosystem, the phone ecosystem. Got the watch, the parent controls, and the family setup with the Apple stuff is really great. So we're an Apple family, but I've been a holdout for the computers. I bought my first new Apple computers, a laptop. I'm talking to you on it right now. It's high quality, well built. It's in the whole Apple ecosystem. Love it, right? My wife has a PC, a Dell or something, for her work at Lego, and she has Microsoft has released effect. Do you know what Face ID is? It's basically facial recognition for your phones have the thumbprint reader on it to log in, the biometric, right? She's had the Face ID thing from Microsoft on her laptop.
Do iPhones not have Face ID?
The iPhones have it. I don't know if the iPads have it, but here's the bitch. Here's my complaint. Apple still does not put their own Face ID technology in the laptops. And then my second complaint is that they still don't put touchscreen. So my wife had touchscreen and this face recognition unlock feature in her laptop, and I was watching her over the last couple of years with it while she was using it. And touchscreen on a laptop is nice. When you're looking on a web and you just or you're reviewing a document, if you can just lean forward and kind of like finger scroll up and down real quick
Yeah.
to look. I mean, it's a practical use case, you know. And then watching the unlock with your face. Now my wife, my daughter, my dad all have newer phones than me. I'm running with this 7-year-old iPhone 8, which we'll be updating this year. But I watch them unlock their phones with their face.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm just like, I'm looking at Apple like, why do you not have the Face ID thing in your laptops and touchscreen? I mean, it's with all of, because now you can get the phone apps now in large part on your Macs, and it would just lend itself to just have this ecosystem. So that
is a little bit strange.
They announced a new laptop, and I was kind of waiting to see, like, are they going to put this technology in their laptops? And they didn't. So that's the mini announcement that I'm complaining about. So go ahead now.
That is kind of a weird one. My travel computer is it's an older Surface Pro, and that's got the detachable keyboard and whatever, but that's had the login with Face and
it does on
screen.
that.
And yeah. I mean, you pull it apart and it's a tablet, and then you pop it back together, and but that's had the Face ID and so I'll usually type on it, and I almost sometimes forget it's got the touch screen, and then I'll go in and pinch something that I'm trying to read or whatever, But it is a huge feature.
Yeah.
And when you go back to a laptop that doesn't have it, it's like going back in a time machine. It's like, I can't touch this. You're so used to doing it on your phone. You're like, oh my God.
And they famously, back in the 2012 or 13, when they were calling for Apple to put touch in there, they took a position. They took a position because they were trying to sell iPads at the time.
Right.
Nobody wants to touch your laptop screen. That's what Apple's position is. Nobody wants to touch your laptop screen.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's just not true. And I think it's unfortunately one of those positions where, they've been wrong before. So, like, how much crow do you want to eat publicly to do the right thing? You know what I mean? And I think they have enough products to distract everybody that, like, it's a small request. It's kind of narrow, but it's kind of one of those moments where you're like, why does, you ever use a piece of software or hardware or something where you're like, the thing that you expect to be there isn't there. You're like, why isn't this here?
Yeah. No, I know.
And then the on a sidebar on the Apple Watch, like, this thing needs a FaceTime camera, like total, like, go full Dick Tracy on this, right?
Right.
Like, and I know it's a small form factor, and I know that they're space constrained, but the watch clearly needs a camera. You know what I mean? Because they're cellular enabled. You're in the ecosystem, the FaceTime software, whatever. Like, it just would lend itself, in my opinion. And I'm watching that closely. But these things seem so trivial, but
I know they seem pretty obvious. And especially with the watch, if you're concerned about the size or the weight of it, just make it a different model. I mean, sometimes you're like, if you're out for a run or a hike or something, maybe you don't want to bring your phone, or maybe you don't want to bring, that, and you just want to grab like a quick, a selfie or something, not any kind of high quality photography or something, but you could certainly want to take a picture or do a quick FaceTime. Nothing wrong with that.
I'm totally dragging my feet to the goggle announcement. But the next thing that they announced was in iOS, the ability to, whenever you want to exchange information with somebody, you always have to, like, exchange phones, which I never do because I'm a security professional. I never hand my phone to anybody, but or you just say, my number is blah, 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 blah. Right.
Yeah.
They're coming out now with this fall with iOS 17, the ability to walk over to another iPhone user, and if you want to exchange information, you hover your phone next to each other, and your respective information is presented on the other person's screen, and then you can accept it yourself. Right? Did you see that piece?
I did. Yep.
So I laugh, and my wife was like, "You're such a nerd. Like, why do you care about this stuff?" But I laughed because I was like, two problems here. One, this came out like 2010 when smartphones came out. You remember an app called Bump?
I don't remember that app. No, you mentioned it yesterday, but I hadn't.
There was an app in 2010 or something that was like early days called Bump, and they had commercials and stuff, and a lot of people downloaded it for a while, and it was cool because you open Bump on your phone and it was cross-platform, and you just like bump into each other, and the Bluetooth connection would be made and whatever, and it would signal the app, and then it would be like, there's a information request exchange, So like that functionality has been around forever. and then Bump kind of like lost its cachet because of, the app economy kind of came up around it and more things were happening. Then you see like Apple in 2023 be like, oh, you can bump information to each other. I'm like, yeah, thanks for innovating, like that. Where was that 5 years ago, for one?
Yeah.
And then for two, like, come on, call Google and be like, hey, let's just make this a standard across Android and iPhone. Like, let's just do this. So like, I get the green blue bubble thing, fine, but like, like, grease the wheels a little bit,
Yeah. Yeah, that is kind of a weird one. I don't run into that instance a lot, but I mean, at least sharing among my contacts on my phone works pretty easily. If I share a contact, if all my contacts, I have an Android phone, but any contact I save there goes into the Microsoft ecosystem. So then it's all in, if I get somebody's email address or something, then it's available in Outlook and all that kind of stuff. But sharing, I don't run into a whole lot. But I mean, now everybody's got like either QR codes or they've got those business card things. It's the tap and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I just it's one of those Apple moves where it's, they do engage with standards and things. I mean, I remember when you could finally add Exchange to your iPhone, which made it more useful in business and stuff. So they will work with others when it, like,
if it's beneficial to them.
Yeah. But it's so obvious to me that they're anti-consumer and pro-Apple, that like all this kumbaya, we love you, we love our consumers, like, do you though? Do you? Because here's my rant going into the goggle. You ready for this?
Yeah.
All right. So we're 51 minutes in, and I think our timing's perfect. Immediately, I was like, I said to I'm like not elbowing my wife, like, look at this mess that they just announced. This goggle. Like, honey, do you want to wear one of these around the house? And she's like, absolutely not. I said, okay. Do you want to pay? And this is before they announced the price. I said, you want to pay $2,500 for this to walk around the house? She goes, absolutely not. Then they announced the price, $3,500, right? And I'm like, okay, so $3,500, and on top of all of that, Apple hardware is famously, with the exception of their laptops, single user. Right. So you can't even and it's been, and parents have been chastising Apple for years for not having a multi-user mode platform on the iPads. Like, why should you buy an iPad for every toddler in your house? You know what I mean? Like, you should be able to like have a multiple identities on the iPads, and then like schools could benefit from that and a lot of things. But no, famously, they are single user for their mobile devices. And same thing with this headset. Like, I don't see a multi-user. They didn't speak to a multi-user. So assuming I want to fill my house with people with Apple Vision or whatever, it's $3,500 a head.
Yeah, that's crazy. So I never even thought about that with the iPads. Like, you couldn't have like on a laptop, you could log in with different users and have different apps, and you can't do that on an iPad.
No, you cannot. There is no login framework on the iPads. It is mapped to the single owner.
That's crazy.
I mean, the reality is I probably would get my kids their own iPads anyways, but
yeah, they'd be fighting over it.
But the use case exists where it would be in the best interest of the consumer if the iPad could be a multi-user platform.
Oh, sure.
Now we're talking about a $3,500 headset, which they're now equating to the next big evolutionary platform where we're going to spend our time. And I want you to share that picture you sent me this morning, which was like almost made me cry because of the accuracy in it.
I know that. Yeah, that was pretty good. I'll have to see if I can find that. But here's the picture of the goggles there for those people looking at the, I don't know, I guess you can't, what are they calling it? They're just calling it a headset, right? Not goggles. But $3,500, and it's the first new product for them since the watch in 2014. And they're giving some pretty good runway, giving them 6 months to, I don't know if they're taking orders on this yet or whatever, but they displayed some Microsoft tools, some Adobe tools, and then Disney chimed in with being able to watch some Disney stuff and do some interactivity there. But I don't know. I mean, like if you were advising any business or anybody that had a product, you'd say, okay, who's your market? What's your market? I don't know. I mean, other than people who are just, have the money to spend on stuff and want to test things out, or maybe even some developers, I don't know really who the market is for this, right?
I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, if it replaces a PC and you can work from it and play in it, then it's obvious, right? Okay, I'm going to sit over here. I'm going to put my headset on and I'm going to do some work. Or I'm going to sit in here, watch some. So like, I get it. Like I have an Oculus Quest 2 or the Meta Quest 2. And I try to use it. I go months and months without even using the thing because it's a heavy, bulky headset. So,
and this is much heavier than that, by the way. So this is heavier because of it's a little bit sturdier hardware and everything, but it is heavier than that.
Yeah, and this is why I laughed so loud when I saw this, because I mean, this thing was so rumored to be over the last 4 years that this was coming, that this was in development, and the punditry always says like, would Steve Jobs have done that? I know we're in like the Tim Cook Apple now, but you look in like, would Steve Jobs have done that? Like, would that have been good enough for him? I don't know. I look at this thing and I'm like, immediately I say in response to this, okay, great. This is your 1.0. Like now go make it 40% smaller.
Right. And cheaper.
And cheaper for sure. But the next, every year Apple's always about like 40% faster, 40% smaller, 30% smaller bezels from last year's model. Like, so the only thing that I see as a positive with this is like, they're going to Appleize this thing at this point. Like this is the worst it's ever going to be. And this is surprisingly lean. So now I'm like, okay, fine. Like you're going to come to market with this ridiculous thing. Go Apple it now. Like every year you're going to come out with a new model and just keep squeezing the hell out of this thing. Because what I do want, and I think I've been saying this to you for a while, is I do want smart glasses. I would be okay with waking up in the morning and putting on my smart glasses that have all sorts of functionality, maybe even most of the functionality that this thing described, which is the augmented reality overlays, messages, apps, sit in a airport or airplane seat and watch a movie, and that sort of thing. I definitely do want that, but I can tell you that I definitely don't want a bulky headset for $3,500 that doesn't really seem to solve any problems,
Yeah, I think it's a product looking for a solution looking for a problem or something, as they'd say, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think you brought up all the good points there, that it is a 1.0, and some of this is just getting it out, right? They know they could wait another year and make it 2,900 and make it better, faster, lighter, smaller, all that kind of stuff. But eventually you have to get the product out, right? So that's probably what this is just getting it out.
I don't know. I mean, you're a $1 trillion company. Like I feel like I would have spent another 2 rounds of iteration on this before I would have announced it.
Yeah, but if you can get it out and sell a bunch of these, and knowing that probably everybody that buys this is going to, if you got enough money to pay $3,500 now, in 2 years you're going to have enough money to pay $2,500 for the next version. So why not get it out and sell this to all the morons while you're still working on the real one?
Yeah, I mean, even after the fanboys buy this, I don't think people, I remember when the first $1,000 iPhone was announced and people were like, what? we're not spending it, and they did, and they do now regularly. And that's now the regular price for an iPhone. I don't think $3,500 or even $2,500. I don't think this thing has enough utility to force a lower middle class family to, not buy Johnny new sneakers this month because they need to get
even sneakers. I mean, this is a major purchase. Even a laptop at this point is.
But what I'm trying to draw the distinction is like even homeless people have iPhones. It seems like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
right.
So like, I just don't think that this is the type of product that like you'll see homeless have, or you'll have economically stressed families, making everything else suffer because they have to have an Apple headset. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, you know what? Maybe it's the complete opposite of this. Maybe instead of this being some kind of an elitist product, maybe this is something we do give to the homeless. And I say this sort of half jokingly, but if your physical environment is so undesirable, maybe this is something we give them instead of saying building a real environment for these folks. Maybe we can just help them by giving them this virtual environment. And as long as they're warm and safe, their actual physical environment means nothing. But now we can give them this, and now they've got something at 3,500 compared to a dwelling at 35,000 is an upgrade for them. Now they can go all these different places in the world and take all these classes, and they can do all these different things for $3,500 at that price. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I'm not going to touch that one, I don't think. I, you know, I don't mean to completely roast this either. I mean, I think it's a compelling space. You know, I bought the Oculus Quest 2 during COVID with some fantasy that the world would see that, wait a minute, to your point, for $400, we can put a 3D webcam in the classroom of every classroom, and a platform, Google or whatever, can spring up around this model with educational institutions, and every kid can have an Oculus Quest 2 or a headset, and now virtually attend in-class instruction. And if you've ever seen 3D environments in it's really kind of compelling. You're like in
They're good.
space,
They're good. Yeah.
tracking head movements. So like if you get sick in VR, this is different. Like you're sitting down and like you're not being overstimulated. You're just in the classroom, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think that's the real opportunity, which I think kind of says what you're saying. Like like you can attend the demonstration that they gave of like watching TV, and you can have multiple sports, and then watching like a replay on your the little versions of the basketball players on your coffee table. The immersion use case is there. But I think this kind of tool is going to be hugely powerful for remote learning. I just don't think that people are yet there with, the platforms aren't there yet. The infrastructure at the schools aren't there yet. But I mean, when I went to college in Champlain College, Champlain was a small private school, but they were kind of like technology forward. Like they spent a lot of money on, I remember playing with VoIP, voice over IP. They spent a lot of money on teleconferencing, and they were early on the distance learning and all of the distance learning platforms. So I do think the virtual headsets are compelling for distance learning. So it just remains to be seen if that will be adapted to that.
Yeah, and it's about the content. If this is at this price point, it's hard to justify. But if this is the tool that lets you take a guided tour of the White House or something for $10, if it lets you do a fly through of the Grand Canyon or a tour for $20 or something, if this is the mechanism that lets you do that, then it starts to be a pretty good deal. If this is the tool that lets you attend a certain conference where if you had to go in person, it would be, it might cost you that to go in person. Now you can sit there and the experience is pretty close to being, live, and you can have the ability to ask questions and, do whatever, and that type of experience. The same thing with sporting. If you can take this and get front row seats to the NBA finals or the World Cup, I mean, that experience is available now. And now maybe that's where Apple partners with some of these, because sports are the only content basically that anybody's really bidding up or paying for. But, if you can get this and then for another $50 get, home plate seats to the All-Star game or to the World Series or something, then it starts to really add value, because the experiences to those are they're really close to being live.
I used to take my dad to a football game, a Patriots game, once a year, just to get out there and get participate in it. But we always hated the drive. We hated the walk into the stadium. it was all, we always went before we learned our lesson and started going to preseason games. We always went in December or October or something. It was always, we're always freezing. So yeah, I mean, if there's a platform that we could get a virtual ticket and you're dropping it on your headset. Do you know if any sports are already selling virtual tickets?
I don't know. I mean, I had one of the early headsets. It was the one where you could it was a Samsung headset and you put your,
I remember
put your phone into it. That at the time, I mean, that was probably 5 years ago, but even that you could get, I think they were on replay, so that wasn't available live, but you would basically get the courtside center court seats, and you could change your perspective where you were behind either one of the benches, you were at center court, kind of opposite the benches, or you were behind one of the baskets. And that experience was pretty good because you could look to the left, you could look to your right. Even when, when you watch on TV, obviously the camera follows the game action from, one side of the court to the other, but the game action would be at one end of the court. You could look down at the other end of the court and just, I mean, obviously nothing was going on, but you could see the crowd and cheerleaders or whatever was going on down there. You could turn around and look behind you, and or look up and be like, oh, what does the top of Madison Square Garden look like? And it was real. It was, so that experience was decent even 5 years ago. So I can imagine that, Apple's already in that business anyway. They televise the Friday night baseball. So they've got that. So maybe this is their way to get those exclusive kind of packages. People said that stuff wouldn't happen, but it's already happened. I mean, if you want to watch the Yankees, you need like 7 different subscriptions. I mean,
right.
It's true. I mean, they're on Apple. You got to find
football's
them
the same
Friday
way.
nights. You got to go. Yeah. You got to go on Peacock. You got to go on all these different things. I mean, there's going to be, certain Yankee games that are only available on this device,
right?
And you say people will never pay for it, but so
far
they have.
We're at the point where maybe the use case exists, but the ecosystem, the infrastructure and the ecosystem isn't quite there. Maybe Apple will be the catalyst to say to. They had Bob Iger on there from Disney, the CEO of Disney, saying like, we're anticipating a more interactive and immersive experience on the Disney Plus app. And maybe that will lead to Google updating YouTube to maybe, you can do kind of 3D stuff on YouTube now, but it seems like a little limited. Of course, it's always content constraint. It depends on the content. The content producers have to put it out in order for that to be there. So maybe this is the time.
By the time this comes out, there will be very exclusive content that people want that will only be available on this device. They're going to announce in the next 6 months some sort of NFL partnership with this, some sort of MLB, some sort of NBA partnership. I mean, the Disney stuff is already there, but there will be very high-end content that will only be available on this device. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And people will start to look at that and be like, oh, $3,500, and I can go to the World Series, the Super Bowl, and the NBA Finals.
Right.
That's not terrible.
Or, trade shows, distance learning.
I can watch
Moana
in 3D. I can get,
right.
These 3 Disney movies are going to be out 2 months earlier on this.
Right.
It's got 2 hours of battery life.
Let me talk about the battery real quick, because this is another bad faith gesture that is so obvious to me when I see this come from Apple and companies like Tesla and Samsung. Clearly the battery did not have to be proprietary from the interconnect onto the device to the battery itself, and that's another anti-consumer move, right? I mean, sure, if you have a proprietary mag connection to the strap to get to your cable, but I mean, come on, that should have been a USB-C plug with. Fine, you can have an Apple branded battery that you can go into it, but it just didn't need to be this kind of closed loop device that is like a static, because you could be sitting down, you get larger batteries or buy rotations, and you know what I mean? Do you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We went through this. Remember when Samsung used to be able to replace the batteries on the phones, And Apple, you couldn't do that. And that was a big selling point. Remember, Samsung built a whole campaign around that. And the
Right.
campaign flopped. And then on the next generation Samsungs, they turned around and did the exact same thing Apple
Right.
did, you
Right.
know. But to, EU has made them, and the next iPhones are going to be USB-C, right? So that's
Right.
a good thing. So maybe
And
by
they're
the
doing it with
time
the
this,
electric cars too. You know, the EU basically forced Tesla's hand because Tesla launched with their proprietary connector for charging, and the EU told Tesla, no, you got to go with the standard. And their CCS in EU, the US hasn't forced Tesla's hand yet. And then to further complicate matters, which we're running long, but Ford just announced last week that they're going to adopt Tesla's interconnect.
right? I
So we're
know.
just like forever stuck in this standards war with these companies. I mean, all the way back to Betamax, VHS, and all the way through
AC/DC, electrical current. I mean, how far
AC/DC.
back do you want to go?
I know. Driving on the
But
left or the right, it's just, I wish these companies would just, not do that. But
yeah.
anyways, we're running long. You want to bring it up?
Yeah. Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting, Connecticut-based investment advisory firm. And Eric.
I'm Eric Bjorndorf, CEO of Evernet Consulting. We're an IT and digital marketing company for businesses all over the country. If you're interested in how we can help you, go to evernetco.com and schedule a discovery call. Follow us on social at EvernetCO.
All right. We'll see you next week.
Oh, that's it.